Ro Rockwell Podcast, Ro Rockwell Podcast. We're doing a special episode today. We have our resident doctor. I'm trying to make him our resident doctor. We'll see if he agrees after this interview. His name is Dr. Gregory Canillas. One time, let's make some noise. How you doing? I can't hear you, Doc. Again, I can't hear you. I'm sure he's saying something. I can't. Did I mute him? I can't. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, now we can hear you. How you doing, Doc?
You got it? You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There's a lot of noise in the background, though, like somebody mowing the lawn or something. What is it?
It's a mini fan. I'll turn it off.
Okay, if you don't mind, sorry. Because we were trying to put the audio online, too. It only benefits.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. You're actually our first, are you? Yeah, you're our first return guest, and we appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back.
No problem. You joined us in our infant stages. That was like 2 months ago. It was like the beginning of quarantine. You helped our listeners navigate towards that. How are you dealing with the quarantine? I've seen your Instagram. And no disrespect, it doesn't seem like you're paying too much attention to the quarantine. You know what I'm saying? But how are you dealing with the quarantine?
What does that mean, bro?
I just feel like you're out and about. You're just living your life, which is a great thing. So I want to ask.
Well, yeah, I'm living my life within the limits of how we can live our life right now. So you probably saw that I took a flight recently to Arizona, and that was for business because we were supposed to host a retreat in November. And so did that, but was masked up and socially distanced on the flight as much as you could do that. Yeah.
No, yeah, I was just joking. And like, I know you're very responsible, and you did actually legit help our guests like navigate through, especially because there's been a lot of divorces, and I don't know if you helped any of those people, but like, there's a lot of people who like needed to know, especially with relationships. I had to deal with a breakup prior to quarantine. We'll get into that on another subject. I mean, another episode. But yeah, you are helping people, and I know you take the quarantine seriously, and we appreciate you. You're actually like, I respect the shit out of you, and I'm gonna curse if you don't mind. Just that's how I talk. So I respect the shit out of you, sir. And I see a lot of the work you're doing, and I see a lot of the almost nonprofit and like philanthropic things you're doing, and I commend you on that. And I would like to touch upon that at the end of the podcast, if you don't mind.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's get into the tea real quick, okay?
Okay.
So we're a little bit late, but people are still talking about it. Jada and Will, this red table talk, because I still watch it when I'm bored in bed. I'm like, I still can't. I'm like, wow, this is. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that interview?
So I had heard the rumors swelling like everybody else had heard about them, and was just, I think my initial thought was how truthful they are. So a lot of people aren't going to have those discussions around that. I was talking to a friend about it earlier today, and he made a really good point, because my thought was they don't really have to do that. That's their relationship, and they don't really have to disclose that. But he made a really good point about Jada being the head of the Red Table Talk. And the Red Table Talk really focuses on coming to the table and being truthful about your experiences. So it's no wonder that she would do that. But, you know, they don't normally have to do that. People don't normally have to bring everybody into their relationship. I don't know if that's always the best thing. Anyway.
And before we get into what they discussed, do you think it helped them, or do you think it hurt them doing that?
I think it helped them. And I think it helped other people too who might be dealing with the same situations. But I think that you can see that there's been growth in their relationship over a number of years. I don't know how many years that they've been married off the top of my head, but I think it's over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And because I think that their youngest kids are over 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And they've been married, I know, since they married before they had their first child, their first child together.
I know they had a song called Hugs and Kisses that came out in 98, because I bought that, or 99. So it's over I bought that album, Hugs. They did a remake of that song. And
okay.
Anyways, yeah, continue.
That's probably right. But Jaden is their eldest child that they have together. I know they have a son, Trey, who's older. but they've been together for probably at least 2 decades. And over time, their relationship, it seems to have matured. And that's from their own conversations that they've had on the Red Table Talk and things that I've heard them both say independently in the media. So it's not a surprise. I think that they seem to be in a good place with it. Other people have thoughts about it though.
Mhm.
Other people have been dragging them through the mud about it.
Yeah, not to backtrack. Could you just let the people know what you specialize in? Because I'm not going to say it correctly, but there's a reason we're having this conversation.
Okay, sounds good. So I am the president and CEO of Soul to Soul, which is a mission-driven company that specializes in couples and parenting retreats, primarily for LGBT couples. And then we also do like couples coaching, parenting coaching, and that's open to everybody.
Hmm. And I like the word you chose because I feel like that's a expert's choice of words. You said it seems like a relationship has matured into this. So
Mhm.
could you elaborate on that? Why you think it matured into this? Because I agree with you, and I'll say my piece on this as well. But could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think when people first get married, they don't do some of the things that my company does with people. And that's to like really do like premarital kinds of counseling to figure out what your issues are, your core issues that you're bringing from your family of origin. They don't know how to communicate. There's generally not open conversations about sex, which I think we talked about in our last your last podcast
We
with
did.
me.
It was.
And they don't talk about finances, things like that. But over time, either people get better at communicating around those issues and it strengthens the relationship, or they don't deal with those issues and it will cause like separations or divorce. So I think at the time that they talked about her having that entanglement, that was the time that they were separated. And so there were probably some issues in the relationship that they had to deal with at that time. But they seem to have been able to work through those issues. They've come to a place, I've heard them say this publicly a number of times, where they are in it to win it, basically. They're going to be in that relationship, whether I heard Jada say, whether they're on one side of the house with somebody else and the other person's on the other side of the house with somebody else, they're not going to divorce. They are in it to win it.
Wow, she did. She did say that, and she said that a few episodes before. Because I watched a few of
Mhm.
these, like Red Table Talk, even before all this happened. She did. She's all. They're almost automatic, like telling us what's going on. They're all like trying to tell us, like, look, this is our relationship. We're just like not trying to like listen to it or like accept it because we're so stuck in our conservative or what's the word whatever the word is. There's a fucking word I'm looking for. It's like where it's the way it's supposed to be. Like whatever. I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, like we're not used to it, so we're trying to almost make them come. And there's been rumors about them swinging and things like that. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
I want to just ask this. So do you think like how many years in is it acceptable, or is there not any years in to be like how many years in is it okay for this kind of behavior to happen, or does it not matter like as long as you guys are on the same page?
When you say behavior, define that for me. What do you mean
So
exactly?
like okay, so 10 years in, like you said matured, and I feel like okay, 20 years in maybe, and I believe in that too. Okay, it's at that point it's okay to have like an open marriage, quote unquote. But do you think it's okay to have that 5 years in, 10, even 2 years in, or should people try to, you know what I mean, like work it? I'm not, yeah. I
I
just,
think that depends on the couple. But I think that there are couples that go into the marriage or relationship and that's the understanding that they have. I don't think you have to necessarily wait until you're married, until you have the piece of paper to have those discussions. In fact, they probably should happen before um, before 5, 10 years, 20 years into it. If that's something that people are interested in, they need to be upfront about it
mhm.
because there are open relationships and there's research to support that they're not necessarily detrimental to the people in them, that there are certain things that they are able to get from having a relationship with multiple people. There's all kinds of stuff around that with religion, and people that are very religious probably wouldn't co-sign that, but there's a lot of psychological literature that supports that that's not necessarily a negative thing.
Could you go into that? And I really glad you mentioned there's a literature that supports that because I'm polyamorous, and is that the same thing as open relationship? Polyamorous, same thing, right?
It could be, but I think open relationship, I think it's defined a little bit differently. So
Okay.
polyamorous means that you love multiple people. You can love multiple people at one time. Open relationships, I think some people would define it differently as it being two people that are committed in that relationship, but may have other people come into it from time to time.
Great.
And so polyamorous, I mean, multiple love connections, so to speak, versus the open, which might mean for that particular couple that they're committed, whether that's a long-term relationship or whether it's a marriage, but then on occasion they may invite other people in for sexual
Okay.
gratification.
Right? Like
Yeah, so I think that's how people are usually defining it. And in both those cases, it has to be consensual. So we're not talking about cheating. We're not talking about infidelity. There are a lot of people that think cheated, but I don't think that that's what she was saying. I think that she said that they were at a point where they separated, and then that's when she got into her entanglement.
Okay, and we're gonna get back to that. I'm a smart man. I know what I'm doing here. I'm an ADHD podcast. I'll remember what you just said, but I don't also want to forget what I wanted to elaborate on was a literature that supports this kind of, open relationships, and religious people don't like it. But what kind of literature could you elaborate on that supports this kind of,
So there are a lot of
relationship?
psychological studies that support that consensual non-monogamous relationships can be healthy when people have open conversations about it. So if both people agree to it, then I think that is healthier than if people don't agree to it. If one person's like, I want to have an open relationship, and the other person says no, that's going to cause a lot of conflict within the relationship. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what is consensual. And I think I told you the last time I was here that I sit on the APA's joint task force for developing the professional criteria around working with LGBT clients. It's a mouthful, but basically, we're updating the guidelines for working with LGBT people or sexual minorities. And so one of the areas that I've written on is consensual non-monogamy. And so
There's
there's
a lot of
tons
big
of
words right there, Doc. You got to break it down for my audience. I know what those words mean, but break
right.
sexual non-monogamy. Break that
So
down.
consensual non-monogamy means that both people agree to be non-monogamous or not to have open relations or of the sexual kind with other people. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I knew it. I did know it, but I'm just trying to break it down for
It's
my audience.
tricky. No, it's tricky. I'm glad you asked me to define it
And
because
it's a great,
I
I'm gonna
use it so
write that
much.
down. That's a bar right there. Sexual non-monogamy. I'm gonna write that in a rap, bro. Like that's a bar. But let me elaborate on this part, okay?
So CNS, let's just call it CNS,
DNS.
consensual non-monogamy.
Got you.
Okay.
Do you, in your experience, and we'll get back to Will and Jada, in your experiences, I've tried, and do you find one person or the other can agree to this in the beginning phases of a relationship, but when something happens, it goes awry? And what's the percentages that you've seen vaguely that it's worked, in your opinion?
So I don't have numbers, but
Mhm.
I can tell you where that there's literature to support that when people consent to it um, and have healthy, open discussions around it, that and have boundaries, clear boundaries about what it means, that there aren't necessarily problems in those kinds of relationships. Where there are problems is when people don't agree to uphold whatever the guidelines were for that relationship. So, for example, if I entered into a relationship with someone and we decide to have a third person come into it, and the boundaries are you can only have sex with that person. You can have it with me present, and you can have it outside of the relationship with me not present. And that's the boundary. But you cannot fall in love with the other person. And I break that and I develop a relationship, I develop feelings for the person, then that's when the problems develop.
You know what?
So,
Mhm. I'll let you finish.
so it's like psychological literature. Threes are bad, like triangulation. There's something called triangulation. Anytime you have threes, there can be problems unless people have open discussions about that. It's not just around romantic relationships. It can be around a parental relationship. It can be around a friendship. So the examples I always give to people, because I've talked about this a lot in classes, are if you have two friends, like let's say me and you are friends, and we have a third friend, and you and I are always going places and not including that other friend, that becomes problematic for that person because they
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like they're part of the relationship. Same with children and families. If you and I are parents, we're parenting a child, and the child comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to go to the movies," and you say no, they come to me and I say yes, then um, that can be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's having like real clear boundaries that's most appropriate.
That makes sense. And you know, sometimes it's clear in the beginning. Sometimes some people waver. Do you agree? Like, because I have two examples that I know in the hip hop world that really work. Because I watch a lot of Breakfast Club interviews. So I know T-Pain got a relationship like that. I know Killer Mike has a relationship like that. Basically, where they both are into girls. You know, like the man and the woman are into girls, and it's work perfectly fine for them. For T-Pain, he's been married for over 20 years. Same with Killer Mike. They go to strip clubs and they both approach the third person together. You think that's way better if, like, rather than one person? And I'm not asking for my own personal benefit. Maybe I am. I'm just trying to prepare for the future. You know, it seems like a great life like that, you know, but do you think that,
It
like,
can be complicated though. I mean, there's religious support that is healthy for people because in the literature it says that for some people, they're able to get from that third person, and this is more like with polyamorous relationships, they're able to get something from that person that they're not able to get with their partner. And because everybody is not going to meet all of your needs. So there are people that say that that's the support for that, that if there's another person involved in it, that they can get something from that person, whatever that is for them, that's missing, seems to be missing with the other person.
That makes a lot of sense. And I do want to get back into that, but I know I can go super deep into that topic because we can go super deep into that. But I want to get back to a good point with Jada and Will that a lot of people are saying she cheated. Why do you say she didn't cheat it? She didn't cheat.
She didn't cheat.
Let me say that again so I get a good clip. Why do you say she didn't cheat?
She didn't cheat because that's what she said. I mean, obviously, I'm not in their relationship. I'm not. I don't know them
But just
personally.
from
But what she said was they had a separation, and then in that separation, she developed an entanglement with August. So that really is technically not cheating. They were separated. And Will Smith said that he did not give consent to that, and they tried to clear that up. But I wouldn't say that that's cheating because they were separated. Maybe still living in the same house, but clearly they themselves said that they were done with each other, and they did not think that they would get back together, and may have been living in the same house, but pursuing other people and other things.
And
So I would not count that as infidelity. Is that probably still hurtful to Will Smith? Probably so. Was she probably hurt when August broke it off? Probably so. Because when you have those kinds of relationships, it's hard for people to separate their feelings and emotions from them.
An entanglement. I'm just trying to do my Will Smith impression. An entanglement. So I'm saying that to say this. What was your first impressions on hearing that word? Do you think she was trying to beat around the bush? Or do you think that was a perfect word for it?
Well, I thought it was interesting. Obviously, there have been memes and songs that were made immediately after. There's all kinds of stuff that's on the internet about
The
it.
world by storm, that word.
Yeah. I mean, there's whole songs.
The world by storm, yeah.
But I thought that was an interesting way to describe that relationship with him. And obviously, Will Smith had a reaction to it. He was like, entanglement, like, explain what that means. But yeah, I think it was like everybody else is like, okay, that's an interesting way to describe what happened.
See, but you're using an ambiguous word like entanglement. You're saying interesting, and I get people like to do that, but what does interesting mean to you? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just want to know your truth.
To me, I think it's an interesting way to describe that relationship. She didn't say I had another relationship with this person immediately. She used the word entanglement, which is probably accurate for her. It is an entanglement. I mean, things were kind of entangled, so to speak. So I think that's an accurate representation for how she feels about it. Other people obviously have taken issue with that.
Yeah,
certain camps of people that think she cheated.
Because I watched it a few times. I just like to see the dynamic. I don't know why. I like to see her reaction. She's like, yeah, because I like to see a chemistry between people who've been together for a long time. It's really interesting to me because I've never seen it, like in my life, So I like to see it. And then She's like, yeah, she knew that he was kind of poking, and then he was like, a relationship, and then and she's like, yeah, like, but wasn't saying that like bullshitting. That's how she felt, right? Like that it
That's
was.
how she describes it, I guess. I mean, and that's also probably an easier way to have that conversation with him.
Mm,
They've clearly had a discussion before they came to that red table, because
mm, why do you say that?
that probably would have been a whole nother issue if she revealed that on show with him not knowing that. That red table would have probably been turned over.
Mm, I'm making that
Red
happen.
table, all right. Yeah, it'd be a whole nother show. But they obviously have had conversations around that. They
What makes you
before
think?
this
I think
probably
they did
came
too,
to
but I
be.
want you to tell the viewer like what, because it still looked like he was hurt, and people are making memes of him like crying, like
Oh
he's
yeah,
the new Jordan meme, and he looked hurt on air. But I agree with you. I'm sure they. So what do you think? What do you think changed from them doing it in private and then being public, and him still looking there because he's an actor, right? Like as much as great as the actor he is, we all saw that he was hurt, you know. And
yeah, of course.
yeah, so what do you
That's
think?
a natural reaction, though.
But like,
Even
what
though they've had
because it's in
discussions
public?
about it.
Mhm.
Say again, right?
So you think it's because it was in public, that's why it hurt more, or do you think that just was his reaction even when it was in private? Like, or do you think?
I think that was his reaction.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I think that was his reaction. That was his
Okay.
reaction to hearing that. So they probably had that discussion about it before. Not probably. I'm sure they had that discussion before they went to that red table. Probably many times.
Mhm.
I don't think that was.
They
I don't
broke up
think it just
5 years
came
ago,
up to be
August
before.
and Jada, like in 2014 or 6 years, yeah, 6 years
Yeah,
ago.
2015, I think, is when they met. It
Mhm.
was at a concert. I think it was Jaden's concert or something. She
Yeah,
told that
around that
story.
time too, 2014, 2015. But yeah, it was a
Yeah,
long time ago, and I think they ended it a long time ago. So like they, yeah, like you're right, they had this conversation. But yeah, so continue what we are saying. Like, what's the difference between? Um,
he was on the show in 2018, so they probably it's recent. They had a pretty long relationship. Um,
Yo, sorry, but in the Red Table interview, she said I haven't spoken to him in 5 years, but you're absolutely right, and you actually other people have said that. It just seems like her facts are a little wishy-washy. Did you remember?
I didn't hear that part. I don't know that if she said 5 years or not, but I know she
Yeah,
said
but
she had talked to him a long time. But
yeah,
that's only 2 years because
gotcha.
he was on the show and he was talking about substance issues, and her mom was on the show talking about her own journey with substance abuse issues. And I think that clip that I saw recently was from 2018.
It was 2018.
So
Mhm.
they've had contact in the last 2 years. So
Yeah.
I don't know if their relationship went from 2015 to 2018 and it ended before or after he was on the show. But there probably was certainly some time. But to get back to what you were asking about Will, I think that was just his natural reaction. Like you can hear stuff, you can hear the same story over and over again and still have a reaction to it, a gut reaction to it. Because there are people, I mean, you probably, you know this, you have relationship issues where something's happened and you think that you've moved past it or you have moved past it, but it comes up again, it will bring up the same emotions for people because there was initial hurt around that. So I think it was a natural reaction. I mean, he got a lot of flack online of people talking about his masculinity, people talking about how he reacted to it, people talking about him giving her permission. I mean, people just kind of drug Will Smith. I think honestly, I think they drug him more than they drug Jada.
What do you think should have been drugged? Like, what do you think? Let me make the question clearer. What do you think August's role? How do you think he played this whole thing out? You think he's just young, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. How do you feel about his behavior and all this?
So I don't think anybody really should have been drugged in media, but I do think he probably created more of a issue for them than they would have liked. Because I think if those kinds of relationships, um, I mean, like most relationships, I said they don't have to talk about those relationships. That's their personal business. But I think he put that out. He put that out, and it seems like he put that out without them really knowing that he was going to put that out, which is kind of like um, I don't know, kind of skanky.
Mhm. Skanky, it was skanky. Yeah,
Yeah. Let me just, this is not a really clinical term here,
yeah.
Ro, but kind of skanky. That's kind of,
Like, is there a clinical term for that type of behavior, or like, is there not? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
probably so, but I don't want to say that I would diagnose it because I don't know.
no
But
worries.
we'll go with
Hey,
skanky
that's
in
why
this
you're a good
situation.
doctor. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, we'll go with skanky because
Hmm.
I mean, kind of low or whatever you want to say, but it really kind of, I think, caught them off guard.
Mhm.
from media reports. I mean, we're not with them, but from media reports, I don't think they were anticipating that he was going to say that. And then to come out with a song about it, like what the next week, you know, it's kind of a knife in the back, stabbing somebody in the back and then twisting the knife, so to speak.
I think he put the knife in when he did the first interview, and then with that song, he was twisting the knife around.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm such a genius. I just thought of that right now. Oh, I'm so ill with the metaphors. He put the knife in that first interview, and then he was twisting it around. Because we were wondering if he did it by accident, if he didn't mean it. Maybe it was defense.
No, I don't think it was accidental. I don't
Huh?
think it's accidental. Yeah, I don't. The timing is just too close together. I
Yeah,
don't think it's
his
accidental.
album failed. Mhm. But
Well,
August, I'm a fan of August, to be honest with you. Like, I really enjoy his music. I wish he was bigger. I think he has mental health issues, and I think he has physical health issues that's holding him back, that makes him do stuff like this. But I think he's a talented artist. People don't even listen to his music because of the artists out there. You guys think these things are helping you guys? This shit does not help you guys out there. These kind of publicity stunts does not help you because they're only going to know of you because of these things. Now August can put out the greatest song, like a Sam Smith type song, and nobody will respect it because of his behavior. But that's another subject for another day. Let me ask you this, okay? Because I get heated onto this type of shit, and I'm passionate about this type of shit. Let me ask you this, like, this is a controversial question. Why do you think everybody always says Will Smith's gay? I never got it, and Will Smith is the first person I've been a fan of when I was a little kid, because he's the only person my parents would let me buy a CD of. He was like my hero since I was a little kid, and he's never stopped being my hero. It just got less cool for me to say that he's my hero, if that makes sense, you know? Like,
yeah,
so why do you think people, and again, I don't have any problem with, but like, it's if one thing, I have no problem with either way. It's like, but when people say you're something that you're not, it's like they're poking at you. Say somebody was gay and people said, oh, he's secretly straight. He's secretly straight. That's still like offensive. You get what I'm saying? It's like people are just poking at you.
secretly straight.
No. Yeah, secretly straight. Like, say like there's like somebody who was portraying to be gay but are secretly straight. It's just like somebody is poking at you, like, oh, you're telling that you're lying to the public. So I'm saying either way, I don't care, right? But it's like, okay, if you're gay and people are saying you're straight, that's offensive. If you're straight and people are saying you're gay, that's offensive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yes. Why do you think people keep like they're poking at him? And it's like, okay, if he's gay, then like let him be, like, you know. But
So I don't know that he's gay. I mean, he's been in a marriage for 20 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's not. But I think he's been in a marriage. He seems to like women. I've heard the rumor that I've heard is that he's bisexual, not gay. But and that may or may not be true. I don't know. I think he's not traditionally masculine, and so people, I
how is
think
Will Smith not? Sorry, Sidra. How is Will Smith not traditionally masculine? And
I
again,
think he's more open. I mean, he does play like action heroes, but I think in his own life, he expresses emotion, which is not traditionally associated with masculinity.
ridiculous. I don't want to be masculine.
You say that,
Then I don't ever want to be masculine if I can't express my emotion. You know what I mean?
but
Like,
you know what I mean, right?
I know
Like
what you mean. Yeah, I'm
in
just saying
most
this is
communities,
society.
particularly
Yeah,
communities of color, men don't express emotion. He
yeah.
seems to express more emotion than most men. I mean, everything from like even like he's very fashion oriented, all that stuff. Jaden, the same thing. Like people, there are rumors about Jaden as
I know.
well,
And
and whether they're confirmed or not, there are rumors about him because they don't fit the typical stereotype. So I think people latch onto that, and that's less to do about them than how people define masculinity. And this
100.
whole discussion about toxic masculinity in all communities. And so I think people latch onto those kinds of things. Those things don't necessarily define sexuality. That's what most people think defines sexuality. And so they latch onto that. And I think that's what creates the rumors of him being gay or bisexual or what have you. Honestly, people care about that more so than whether they would support bisexuals or gay people in the Black community, which has been this whole debate for the last couple of months when we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and people having to say all lives matter because Black people who are gay or trans aren't always included in that movement. So Black people in particular, but I think it goes beyond that with his concern because he's well known worldwide and in all communities respected. but the black community seems to, particularly Black Twitter, seems to like to drag him and other folks like the Wades, Gabrielle Union Wade and Dwayne Wade over their support of their daughter, who is transgender. And Black Twitter just goes to town about that. But I think it's people's perceptions around their definitions of masculinity. And he doesn't fit that all the time. So he's on screen, and he's, shooting people and killing them. Yes, that's people's definition of masculinity. But when he emotes, that is not necessarily what people think about when they think about masculine men. Does that make sense?
I'm a masculine gay man. I'm drawing. There's a ton of masculine actors who are gay as well. That they're masculine as well. So, could you elaborate on toxic masculinity, because it sounds like such a outdated, but you're right. It's still prevalent in today's generation, which is ridiculous. It's like the whole. I think those are two separate identities: masculinity and your sexual preference. Because I know a lot of gay people who could beat the shit out of me. They could fuck me up. You know what I mean? It makes no sense to me.
Yes, I do know.
Yeah, like could you like elaborate on toxic masculinity? Do you have a little bit? Like, do you have like 20 more minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, we got time. We got time. Yeah, so
and we'll get to the other subjects after that. But I want you to elaborate on toxic masculinity, if you don't mind.
so it I guess in a nutshell, it's how people define masculinity that's limiting. And so men are expected to not emote. And if they do have emotions or express emotion, it's anger. That's the only one that really is supported for men. Whereas women can have a range of emotions. Now, there's negatives and positives with that too, because then people will say women are overly emotional, and that is a negative against the femininity. So it's really like more limiting. Guys can't cry around things. You can't wear certain colors. I was at a neighborhood one day, and I had a lilac sweater. I was walking through little boys, and little boys like, "Why do you have on a pink sweater?" I'm like, "It's lilac, little boy. I don't have time for your toxic masculinity
No.
issues." But just like it's ingrained from growing up, and you do not want to be in most communities associated with femininity at all. So men become hyper masculine in how they define themselves and how they define other people. And then women join into that too. They're not immune from it. Women are just as bad in terms of how they view masculinity.
I see the tweets, and I see like they may have a gay best friend, but I see when something like this happens, those little snarky little like left-sided tweets, like they're like, oh
yeah,
maybe he might as well be, you know what I'm saying? Like they're acting one way, but when somebody, it's just very complicated. And I'm glad we got to say that for another day, because and I'm glad you explained that, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I have a lot of opinions on that. But let's because I have a lot of opinions on the way males and females view homosexuality. I think it's very contradictory sometimes, and so we'll say that for another day. But that was just, and I appreciate you. That's why you're a resident doctor. Whether you like it or not, I'm gonna call you on Zoom every 2 weeks. We're gonna talk about the issues, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Okay. But I think you, just to sum that up though, I think you see the same thing with race. Like people will say, now we're going through this whole thing around race and equity and all of that. And there are people who say, well, I have a best friend who's Black. Like I'm totally into it. I know Black people's issues. And they're as racist as anybody else. So it's the same thing as people who are allies with the LGBT community. You can, unless you deal with your own stuff around that, how good of an ally are you?
And this is what I want to go, because I know we discussed what we're going to talk about ahead of time, but actually you said something that I didn't really even know about. I didn't know that like homosexual, like gay or lesbian and trans in the Black community don't feel that they're part of the Black Lives Matter. I didn't know that. Like I see like I'm just gonna tell you what my initial thought real quick. When I see Black trans lives matter, could I tell you what? And I'm not gonna edit this. I'm here for education. Okay. I thought that might be like diluting. I just thought that person is Black, so they should be a part of the Black Lives Matter. you know, and I felt like initially it was like, oh, now we're separating everything. Like now the Black Lives Matter is losing because it's Black Trans Lives Matter. And again, I know two trans people. One is my photographer, and that poor guy, sorry, that poor woman had to tell me that she's transitioning during that time that she was being my photographer, and that broke my heart. And that me and her had a discussion over that period where it really led me to learn a lot about what trans people have to go through. And I bless her heart, because I would have never known. Sometimes you have to meet people in person. I know it seems like I'm walking around this shit. I'm trying to say, I didn't know that Black trans lives and Black homosexual lives don't feel included in the Black Lives Matter. Could you please explain that to me?
So Black, gay, lesbian, trans, bisexual people do feel like they're part of that movement because they're Black. It's some people within the movement who exclude them from that. So when they're having conversations about being Black, the Black community has historically had a problem with LGBT people. Not everybody, but quite a few people. And so they see that as a separate issue. They're not always accepting. Some of it maybe has to do with the religious aspects. John Lewis, the congressman who just recently passed, there's a whole thing in his tributes this last week. He was one of the first people to come out in support of LGBT people, marriage equality, all of that, like 20 years ago, well before other people jumped on the bandwagon. But historically, other people, whether they're politicians or not, are not always supportive of the LGBT community. There are people that don't come out. Like I told you, I didn't come out until I was 33, because I'm raised in a Black and Filipino family that's very religious, and was the first person to really come out of my family. So people knew about it, never said anything about it until I came out. Then everybody was like, ha ha ha, oh, we knew that. But really not as supportive as some communities. So they don't feel like—
Stop you right. I'm sorry, because I've been wanting to ask this, but that was a perfect point. What community, other than the white people, because I feel like white people just, they're accepting of a lot of things, other than whites, because they get away with a lot of things. I said it. He didn't say that. I said white people get away with a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. What other community you think it's easy? Like, because I always hear that. Like, I grew up around Black people. I grew up in a Black community. I have a lot of Black friends, and I always hear that. Like, and I have a lot of lesbian Black girlfriends. You know, like, and they always say in the Black, but what community are you guys? And I'm not saying this in a condescending way. I'm genuinely asking, like, what is another community that is better to come out in? Does that make sense? Like, what is it?
None, really.
None, right?
True.
Like, you can't. I don't even know any.
And even in white white communities, especially where people are very religious, they have problems with it too. There are white people that I know who came out to families and they were disowned. So I think they might be slightly more accepting than communities of color, but they still have issues too. It's not to say that white people come out and there's a big parade all the time, because there are tons of people that can tell you they were not well received. But I think in communities of color, I think people have a harder time with it because there's less of an individual focus and more of a group focus. So people in like your Indian community, Muslim communities, Asian communities, Latino communities, they tend to be much more focused around family and community. And there are all these issues around like the family and honoring the family. And if you do things that are seen as against the family or the community, people will ostracize you. So it's much harder, I think, in communities of color, but it's not that white people don't get flack for it either. I just think it's harder to come out in communities of color. And some of that has to do with religion and just people's thoughts and beliefs about it.
I agree with that. And I do agree it's not easy to come out in any, oh man, I had such a great point right now, and I'm not editing. I had such a great point, bro. I had such a great thing to say about what you just said. Okay, but I'm drawing a blank. We'll get back to it. So let's get back to, because, okay, coming out, let me think. It's okay. Let me think. I had something to say. So coming out of minority communities, whatever, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, this is what I want to say. And it's very important. I'm glad I took my time, and I don't give a fuck what y'all think, because I take my time and I don't edit. and it came to me. You guys got to just breathe them. All right, this is what I've seen in most communities. The main reason that, especially the mothers, and again, I know we're getting off topic. We'll get back to the other topic and we'll end this. I know you got to go. You're a doctor. You're a busy man. Okay. But the most thing I see from it's like everybody loves their children. It's like the most thing that I hear people say is, "Oh, we don't want a tougher life for that person that they love." And I have a younger cousin. He don't watch my podcast song, and I was like, dude, every family has a gay person. I'm like, who's a gay person in my family? I don't have the biggest family, but I have a younger cousin who I know is gay. Like I don't know it, but I have a strong inkling, and I think it's, and I try to like. I know he is, and he just doesn't know how to do it because his mom is going to worry about how he's going to function in society, but it's fucking 2020. So do you agree with that? That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Do I agree that
that's the main concern, or do you think people are really bigoted? Like, or do you think they just hate, because
so let me say, I think it can be, it depends on the person and the family. So I that has a real concern that I've heard people say. My own mother said that too. Like there's concerns about that. There's concerns about religion. Like my mother was a lay minister, so her concern was, are you going to heaven? Like I have had my own conversations with God, and I'm good, but she was very concerned about that. People are concerned about whether society will react to that in a negative way. It's 2020, but people who are LGBT still experience discrimination. People who are not comfortable with public displays of affection in the same way, like people won't necessarily hold hands with their husband or wife or spouse, because there could be fallout from that within communities that aren't necessarily LGBT focused, like West Hollywood in LA or in the Castro in San Francisco. So there are real concerns that parents have around that. But I think one of the biggest things for families that I've worked with before is that, and I don't think people pay enough attention to this, for most parents, there's a grieving process that they have to go through. And I think that needs to be honored and respected. And it's not always, because they come off as the bad guy, the bad girl, because they will have such negative things to say to their kids. But when you really dig down deep into what that is, it is their unrealized dreams for that child. And so there has to be a grieving process around that, because they've envisioned like you're going to get married to somebody of the opposite gender. You're going to have kids. I'm going to be a grandmother or grandfather. You're going to have the little white picket fence, the house with a white picket fence, and 2 dogs and a station wagon and all these little, minivan or whatever. But there's this whole fantasy that they have in their heads. And some people have actually taken the time to plan that out for people, have saved money for them to go to college and to buy first homes and all that stuff. So there's a grieving process. I think you want to focus on the person that's coming out, but I think what's oftentimes missed is the family doesn't really get support around that, because it's a loss, and it needs to be treated.
Bad thing that it's the grieving process, like because it's like a death. And I understand what you're saying. It's like when somebody gets hurt when they're pursuing their MBA dream. That's a grieving process, right? Like it's not necessarily a death, but you can't. So I get what you're saying, that you have a whole dream. And I kind of always thought about it. I never really thought about that as a very interesting point. That's why you're the expert. And as we're on this topic, and I have, again, like, people say I have black friends, I have white friends, like I have a lot of gay friends, like just like both sides. I have lesbian and gay friends. But one thing I always never understood, this is my last question on this topic. We'll go back to Will and Jada. But I'm glad it's led us here. Let me ask you something, because I didn't grow up in a religious background. I was born a Hindu, but I don't even know anything about Hinduism. Like I don't, my parents were really that religious. Okay, in the Catholic, and because this is what I've seen in most Catholic and Christians, right? Is every sin equal? Could I ask you that? Is every
as I understand it, yes, every sin is equal.
So like telling a lie is a sin, right?
Right.
Right? Like gluttony is a sin, right? Pride is a sin, right?
Right.
What makes homosexuality a greater sin than the others? Because I never understood that. Like what everybody sins, obviously. So quote unquote. I don't think it's a sin. Yeah, but I'm just from their point of view, you know what I mean? I really want to understand this.
So I think it has to do with repentance. And so when Christians, which includes Catholics, sin, they're supposed to do, they're supposed to repent. So with Catholics, there's something called confession, and they can do that. It's not required, but people will oftentimes go and they'll meet with the priest and they'll confess their sins, and then the priest will give them something to do. It's like repentance for that. They may pray or whatever he tells them to do. And with homosexuality, how do you repent from that? Or should you even repent from it? Which, in the case with LGBT people, no, you can't. That's who you are. So I think that there's a thing around that with the churches, because people are like, well, you're not repenting from that. You're still having sex with men if you're gay, or you're still having sex with women if you're lesbian, and you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should repent and ask for God's forgiveness. But how can you ask for forgiveness when that is who you are? It's a whole different thing. It's not this. I mean, there are things in the Bible about not eating shrimp, and people have fish fries every Friday, and they're eating shrimp.
You think they go to church and repent every single Friday, or every Saturday?
Yeah, they're not repenting from eating shrimp. So, but that's a whole different thing from your personhood. You can't repent from being who you are. And that's a whole nother issue too, because people say, well, it's a lifestyle, it's a choice. It's not a choice, it's not a lifestyle.
That makes, because you could say, I'm going to stop eating shrimp next week, and that's easy
Right.
for somebody to say, but you can't. Okay, this
You
is the
can't
first
repent
time
from
I'm an old man. I'm an old man, and I had a lot of friends, and I never understood it. I've never understood why.
But you're not any, at least you're asking the questions, because I can tell you that there are people that know people for years and years and years that don't understand that. There are gay people who don't even understand that. I've done so many presentations in the past around religion and coming out in communities of color, and people who've lived the life, meaning that they've been in their life living as a gay person and having those experiences around religion, they can't explain it either. So you're in a better place than most people, because at least you're asking the questions and gaining the knowledge around it.
And I thank you for that. And I've been asking the question, but I think you're an expert in like a lot of, even like I have my best friend Dane. He was doing the podcast with me. Shout out to him. Like, he's going through his own struggle right now. But I think it stemmed from his guilt of being like, I'm the only friend who stuck with him. He's my friend since we're like 7, 10, 8, like young kids, right? And everybody. So he's dealing with this right now, but he's dealing with another like a substance abuse issue. He doesn't mind me talking. I don't. If he does, and he won't mind me because he's an open guy. So he's dealing with, but I think that stemmed from his shame from being gay in his family. He's from a Catholic family, and I never understood, like, why is this more shameful than fucking lying or from stealing? People I know. People. So okay, you broke that down, and that's the last. We'll do another pod on that.
Yeah,
I want to thank you though, real quick, because this was a
whole,
moment for me, because it was an enlightening moment. Like, I really got to learn. I got to sit down and listen. And finally, dude, I'm old. Like, I finally got to fucking understand it. I've known so many gay, and my homegirl Aina Brian, she's a rapper, and Temper, she's a great rapper, and she tells me about this shit all the time. And I'm like, I just never understood. And okay, let's move on to that.
But I'm gonna tell you, most people don't understand it. So like you're talking about your friend with substance abuse problem, there's so many people that have those issues and they can't connect the dots because they've not really had those kinds of discussions. So they drink, they self-medicate to deal with those issues. I don't know about your friend, but this is what I've had many experiences with people, professionally and personally, who have substance abuse problems because they haven't dealt with the issues of coming out as gay, or dealt with processing that and what that means for people.
I hope, and I think you're helping people. I hope one day, and I think we've made a lot of progress. I think we made. I was gonna say, and you can correct, and I might be saying the wrong thing. I'm just gonna say, we can edit. I think we made more progress in that aspect in society than we have with minorities and their rights. But I might be totally wrong. I don't know, and I'm wrong, huh? I'm wrong, huh? I'm wrong. I know. I'm wrong. All right.
So I'm gonna say that I think both groups have progressed. So if we were born in the 1950s and grew up in the 1950s, we're at a different place now than we would have been then. Yes, I would agree with that. In both cases, with people of color and with LGBT people. But for both groups, there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made. So we have LGBT people they have marriage equality now. That's only been for 5 years, if you can believe that people could get married across the country. But there's still things I think that can be done. And we talk about like substance abuse issues. People come out earlier in the current generation. They're coming out like 13, 12, 14, 16, people coming out really early. But then they end up having the same issues like around substance abuse. And so why is that if you came out earlier and it seemed to be that you were supported by community? Because they're not. They're really not. When you start peeling back the layers, they may have some familial support, maybe not. They may have some community support, maybe not. But all of those things, I mean, this whole thing about minority stress model and the stressors that being marginalized can have on people and how that impacts your own relationship with self and your relationship with other people. So I say some movement, but not enough.
Thank you for that. Thank you for answering that. And I'm glad I said it. So you guys can say, oh, you worded it wrong. Okay, I worded it wrong, but I still wanted an explanation on it. And if I kept it to myself for being like if I was shy, then I would never got this answer. So I appreciate you answering that. Let's get back to Will and Jada, a funner topic, quote unquote. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you think they recover? Like I like the way Will's recovering. How do you think they recover as a couple? Do you think they do recover as a couple? Do you think people ever are going to put them, quote unquote, as the Hollywood golden couple, or you think it's done?
I mean, for me, they're not diminished in my eyes. I think they, for me, they're in a better place because they're truthful about, they're living their truth, things that we want for everybody to do. And that they very vocal about that. I think that show, Red Table Talk, has helped a tremendous amount of people have conversations that they would have never had around a number of issues, not just the entanglement, but about substance abuse, about blended families. I mean, they've done shows on every topic that relates to families, and they've been honest about it. They've had people come on who are very honest about it. So for me, they're elevated because they're living their lives truthfully, because most people don't do that. I can tell you that from working clinically. Most people lie to themselves and to other people.
Living your life truthfully is healing. That's why she did the Red Table Talk. That's why as many of you guys are hating on her, saying, oh, she's been a fake this whole time. Nah, everybody has their own way of coming truth. Like they don't even know they need to express their truth until it happens. So she's trying to heal everybody. People are saying, oh, she was faking it. She's trying to heal others. She didn't heal herself. She probably didn't even know she needed to be healed until this happened. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not no doctor. I'm just a human being who observes people. And that's my opinion of that.
I would agree. I would say this. People that are always throwing stones, those are the people that usually are fake. Those are the ones that aren't dealing with their own issues. So let's throw some stones at them right now. They're the ones that are really the fakes.
And that's the majority, which sucks. Like that's the majority. Like
that's
race, regardless, it's just the majority of people. It doesn't matter what race you are. The majority of people just throw stones, and that's what it is. You know, that's what Black Twitter is. That's what brown Twitter is. That's what white Twitter is. It's people throwing stones. Just Black Twitter, it's just loud. Because I know I love I'm on Black Twitter and I love it because that's why I'm telling my people to be more expressive. I'm like, Indian people need to speak up more because look, Black people are getting shit done. Black people are getting shit done, and I'm telling you, my Indian people are too quiet. And I'm telling you that, so that's a compliment. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. That's true. But I mean, people out there. I think you can be verbal and vocal about your oppression. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that are throwing shade, throwing stuff. That are just
no, you're right.
And all of that, and to trash other people when they need to be taking a look within. Because usually when that's called projection.
But you're right. But it goes hand in hand in this way. You're absolutely right. But it goes in hand in when you're that expressive, when people are that expressive, they're going to voice their opinions on everything. They're going to say the good things and the bad things, you know? But if it's quiet, you just will never know what people think. So I get what you're saying, but it does kind of go hand in hand because, okay, the same people who may voice, which is wrong, throw stones at like Will and Jada, they may voice something about that's proactive towards helping the Black community. Does it make sense? At least because
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Speaking.
Yeah,
I know it's sort of trite, but that's the way. That's the way I look at it. Yeah,
I think that's true. That I would say that's true. They may have certain thoughts about their relationship, but they may be more pro-Black and all Black lives matters on something else, which I will give you that.
100%. And I'm not justifying their behavior at them throwing stones by any means. I'm just explaining it, or that's the way I view it. And I want my people to speak up more. I want Asians in general to speak up more. But do you have any workshops coming up? How are you doing your workshops right now during the quarantine? Do you have any workshops coming up?
Yeah, so we have a workshop tomorrow night on love languages, but that's sold out. It's going to be online. And then later this week, I'm doing one on relationships. I can send you the links for that, on surviving relationships, because people, struggling. We were talking about this the last time I was here, and so we're doing something around that. It's like a 1 hour lunch and learn on Thursday, and then upcoming are some workshops on premarital counseling,
Mhm.
and those are going to be online. And some of those are specifically for LGBT couples, and some of those are open to other folks. And then we have a Summer of Love Friday night festival of films that's coming up beginning this Friday. So I'll
Nice.
send you links for all of that. So we have some things that are free and open to the public, and then we have some other stuff that's specific to couples who are engaged or married, newly married, or been in relationships for a while, who want to know how they are individually and how that affects their relationship as a couple. Which I'm a big advocate for that. I think you have to do some of the work that Will and Jada have done on their relationship so that they can sit in the place where they are now.
That's perfect. Yeah. And we'll put all those links below in the description box. Thank you for being so open with us. Thank you for being generous with your knowledge. You're
Here,
an expert, Doc. And whether you like it or not, I'm going to convince you every 2 weeks. When some shit like this happens, I'm going to hit you up like, let's get on the pod. Let's talk about some other shit. But thank you so much. Anything else you want to let the people know before we get off?
no, I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. As always, it's a fun conversation. So
Hell yeah.
thank you for having me.
You're a great, man. I'm so glad I did that stand-up comedy that one night. We talked about the first, and you just happened to record me. You happened to be the genitor sword that I made a beautiful friendship, great relationship with you. Thank you once again. I'll DM you on Instagram after this, but thank you for joining us, man. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Have a great night.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.